Thanks Ipsos Ice for sponsoring this video.
It is a 47-yard try by Scott Norwood to try to win the game for Buffalo.
There's one lasting image from Super Bowl XXV, but the story of one of the greatest games in NFL history goes deeper than just one play. The story of an underdog team that executed a surprise attack on their way to a stunning upset, and the lesser heard story of a juggernaut that missed one too many golden opportunities to win their first Super Bowl and sent them into a bizarre era of triumph and failure. This is Wide Right from the Buffalo Bills perspective. Check this out, even though I'm old, I've been playing a lot of baseball, and I got these knee guards on Amazon. The best part? I didn't have to pay for them, because all I had to do was fill out a couple surveys on Ipsos Ice, and they gave me all these options of gift cards I could choose from, and I picked Amazon. Ipsos Ice is so incredibly easy. All you have to do is fill out surveys and get rewarded. And the surveys are tailored to your interests, so you don't get bored. Think of all the extra time you have to kill on the exercise bike, riding a bench in a baseball game. You could be getting a gift card instead of just getting tired. So after this video, click on the link in the description below and get started on Ipsos Ice today. There is literally no catch. Again, that's Ipsos Ice, and click the link below and start earning rewards today. Who were the 1990 Buffalo Bills? If there was any resistance in the AFC, the Bills didn't find it in the playoffs. After a 13-3 campaign in the regular season, the Bills unleashed an offensive barrage on their first two opponents, dropping 44 on Dan Marino's Dolphins before a 51-3 beatdown against the Raiders in the AFC title game. The Bills finished the season first in points scored, averaging 28.6 per game, while allowing the sixth fewest points in the NFL. The offensive trio of quarterback Jim Kelly, running back Thurman Thomas, and wide receiver Andre Reed was just too much for most defenses to handle. Buffalo's no-huddle offense put defenses on their heels, and an opportunistic defense accounted for 35 total takeaways. Just 3 teams had held them to under 20 points that season: Miami, New England, and the New York Giants, who themselves had finished 13-3 in the regular season, knocking off the two-time defending champion 49ers on their way to Tampa, Florida, the site of Super Bowl XXV. And despite scoring just 17 points in Week 15 against the Giants in the regular season, the Bills had come away victorious. But it was another loss from that game that would prove most impactful. Giants quarterback Phil Simms had suffered a broken foot,
First half, and Simms shaking a bit as he goes off,
ending his season. That meant in the biggest game in their franchise's history, the Bills would be facing a backup quarterback, 29-year-old Jeff Hostetler out of West Virginia. The Bills were 6.5-point favorites, and they had every reason to expect another win. And perhaps no one believed that more than the Bills themselves. The week before the game, head coach Marv Levy did not institute a curfew, letting his players enjoy the moment, perhaps too much. They were a pretty fun-loving group that celebrated its success with maybe some excess, and that didn't stop in Tampa, Bills beat writer Vic Carucci said. Multiple players have talked about that with a sense of regret, that they went down there and didn't treat it enough as a business trip. One team partied before the game, the other would wait. The game. The history of Super Bowl XXV has been boiled down to one missed opportunity for the Buffalo Bills. The last play of the game, a 47-yard field goal. It should have never come to that. While the blame has fallen on Scott Norwood and the kick he sliced to the right as time expired, Buffalo lost the game for a few different reasons that had nothing to do with Norwood's right foot. The truth is that Buffalo lost the game on offense. The same offense that was good for over 28 points a game in the regular season and 47.5 points a game in the first 2 games of the playoffs stalled in the biggest game of the season. One of the major reasons they were unable to move the ball on offense was that they were unable to tailor their game plan on the fly. When the Bills traveled to the Meadowlands back in Week 15, they could not establish the run. Thurman Thomas ran for just 60 yards on 21 carries, but Buffalo's passing game was surprisingly efficient, despite the rain and an injury to Jim Kelly that forced backup Frank Reich into the game. When the Bills first got the ball in the Super Bowl, they were seeing a different look from the Giants' defense. And despite that, Buffalo opened with 3 straight passes and went 3 and out. Passes 2 and 3 were crossing routes to Andre Reed, the staple of the Bills' passing game. Reed was swarmed by Giants and tackled short of the markers on both plays. The Bills' longest pass of the game, which happened a drive later, was itself a bit of a fluke. Jim Kelly rainbowed the ball down the left sideline, where Giants cornerback Perry Williams reached out his hand and tipped the ball to James Lofton, who hauled in the carom and nearly scored. Buffalo would settle for a field goal, unable to take advantage of a fortunate bounce. That 62-yard juggling act was the longest play through the air for the Bills. The second largest was just 20 yards. With their famous crossing route stifled, the Bills were lost through the air. Outside of the first drive, Jim Kelly would target Andre Reed on 2 other third downs, both times unsuccessfully. Something was up. They just didn't know what. In total, the Bills' offense faced 8 third downs and didn't convert a single one until the last drive of the game. On their first 7 third downs, the Bills passed 7 times. 4 were incomplete, 2 resulted in tackles short of the sticks, and 1 resulted in a sack. Because Buffalo threw the ball 30 times, 21 of those coming in the first half, they were unable to establish a rhythm that they could have created on the ground. Instead, they relied too heavily on the pass, setting up situations where they had no choice but to throw again on 3rd and medium or 3rd and long. The lack of success on the most crucial point of their drives was a huge reason the Bills possessed the ball for just 19 minutes and 27 seconds of the entire game. But you don't possess the ball for less than half the time your opponent does solely because of the offense's ineptitude on 3rd down. Buffalo's defense was unable to steal a possession by taking the ball away. In fact, the best play they made might have also been their biggest missed opportunity. In the second quarter, with the Giants backed up at their 6-yard line, the Bills were primed to make the play of the game. As Jeff Hostetler dropped back into the end zone, his foot tangled with running back Otis Anderson, causing Hostetler to stagger with the ball hanging in his right hand. Defensive Player of the Year Bruce Smith batted at the ball but was unable to pry it loose. Instead, Hostetler was brought down for a safety, and the Bills missed out on a net 5 points. Rather than a 17-3 lead, the Bills were up 12-3 in the second quarter. It wasn't the only big opportunity that Buffalo's defense blew in the Super Bowl. Well into the third quarter, the Bills still held on to their 2-point lead, but the Giants were marching on a drive that was chewing up yards, and just as importantly, the clock. Facing 3rd and 13 at the Bills' 32, the Bills had a Giants wide receiver dead to rights at the 26-yard line. 4 different Bills were unable to tackle Ingram short of the sticks, and the diminutive receiver lunged for a first down. That's Mark Ingram's dad, by the way. The drive continued, capping at 9 minutes, mercifully finished off by a 1-yard touchdown run from Otis Anderson. As bad as the Bills' offense was on 3rd down, their defense was just as bad, allowing 9 separate 3rd down conversions. The defense was literally battered by Otis Anderson, who finished with 100 rushing yards, and they were beaten to the edge by Mark Ingram and the speedy Dave Meggett out of the backfield. It wasn't until deep in the game that the Bills began to catch on to what was happening. Maybe they couldn't stop the Giants on 3rd down, but they did on 4th. The Bills swarmed Otis Anderson on 4th and 2, setting up their offense for a drive to reclaim the lead. Kelly quickly got the ball in the hands of Thurman Thomas and fellow running back Kenneth Davis. Finally, it was Thomas that broke free, bulldozed a Giant defender, and scampered 31 yards for a touchdown, making the score 19-17 in the 4th quarter. The Bills had finally broke the code, but unfortunately, it was too late. Wide right. Let's fast forward. There were 8 seconds remaining in Super Bowl 25. Scott Norwood trotted onto the field for what would officially be a 47-yard field goal. The Bills had bucked convention on their final drive, running 5 times and passing just twice to move the ball from the Buffalo 10 to the Giants' 29-yard line in 2 minutes and 8 seconds. Nothing compared to the 6-minute march the Giants had put together to take the lead. 60 minutes of adjustments, lessons learned, and heroically reinventing themselves at the last minute. Nothing appeared to have gone their way in the 59 minutes and 52 seconds that had passed, but they could still emerge Super Bowl champions if Scott Norwood could put it through the uprights. And there was a reason to believe he would. Norwood had lasted 6 years with the team, even earning an All-Pro nod in 1988. But there was also plenty of evidence that he would miss. Throughout the 1990 season, the Bills had not even let him attempt a 50-yard field goal, knowing that he had limited range. It didn't help that either Tampa still used natural grass, and on natural grass, Norwood was just 1 for 5 on kicks from 40 yards or longer. Norwood had grown accustomed to Buffalo's AstroTurf, which reduced friction on the ball and added a few yards of distance to every kick. But as the title of this video notes, distance wasn't the issue. It sounds contrived, but true. In a game where Buffalo had consistently blown golden opportunities, it was almost fitting that their last chance also went up in smoke. Like I said earlier, the game did come down to Norwood's foot, but it never should have. The Bills had been ambushed, and it took too long to recover, too long to recreate their game plan. And it was Bill Belichick who had created the perfect scheme. The same Bill Belichick that 10 years later would become the Bills' ultimate villain when he took the job as head coach of the New England Patriots. Despite bottling up Thurman Thomas on the ground week 15, Belichick decided the best chance for his defense was to let Thomas carve them up in the Super Bowl. I thought it was a collective brain fart, like, "What the hell are you talking about?" linebacker Carl Banks said. But he said it. We were all in an uproar, and we're thinking Bill is just conceding that Thurman is just this good of a football player that we won't be able to stop him. And then he reeled us back in and kind of gave us a method to the madness. The method was this. New York played most of their snaps with just 2 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, and 6 defensive backs. It was the perfect alignment to stop Buffalo's K-gun offense, and it worked like a charm. So good, in fact, that the game plan now resides in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Belichick still employs this game plan decades later, using the scheme against Peyton Manning in his MVP season in 2013, with great success. Of course, it wouldn't have been possible without the superb talent on defense, which the Giants had in Leonard Marshall, Carl Banks, Everson Walls, and of course, Lawrence Taylor, lauded by Belichick as the greatest defensive player of all time. Despite touching the ball just 20 times, Thomas ran for 135 yards in the game and picked up another 55 through the air. But it didn't matter. Bills had wasted most of their time trying to fit a square peg into a round hole before figuring out that their running backs would have won them the game. And it cost them everything. The aftermath. Despite missing the biggest field goal in their franchise's history, the Bills rallied around their kicker. "As a holder and as a kicker, you're kicking together," Frank Reich said. "You're a unit." So it's on Scott's record that he missed the kick, but snapper, holder, kicker are all together. So we all missed that kick. Marv Levy remembered the scene in the locker room after the game. "I wanted to console Scott," said Levy, "but before I could talk to him, Darryl Talley and Nate Odoms walked up and said, 'Hey, if we made that tackle on 3rd and 13, it wouldn't have come down to it.' Andre Reed came over and said, 'If I would have caught that pass at the 15-yard line, we would have had a touchdown instead of a field goal.' So many what-ifs that can't be changed. The Bills we know today were not the Bills that arrived in Tampa, Florida in January of 1991. Not even close. Before they were the losers of 4 straight Super Bowls, they were the juggernauts of the AFC, a team loaded with 5 future Hall of Famers, a team that thought they could dominate the 90s like the 49ers did the 80s. It was not to be, but the difference between dynasty and a dud was not just one kick. It was everything that came before.
We wait. There's a snap. There's a kick. It is up. It is no good. No one missed.